In early 2025, the global aviation industry was stunned by China's abrupt freeze on all Boeing plane deliveries. The move, announced without warning, sent shockwaves from Beijing to Seattle. Boeing had long relied on China as a key market, with hundreds of jets ordered to meet soaring travel demand. Officially, China cited safety concerns, but few believed this was the real reason. The timing coincided with escalating US-China tensions, making the freeze look like a calculated geopolitical move. The scale was massive. 179 jets for China's top airlines were suddenly in limbo, with billions in revenue at risk. 3 new planes sat idle on the tarmac, and 50 more scheduled for 2025 were indefinitely suspended. Aviation, once a bridge between nations, had become a battleground. The freeze shattered decades of cooperation, signaling that economic interdependence was now a vulnerability. Boeing, once a symbol of US-China partnership, was left reeling. The skies had become a new front in a deepening conflict. The world watched as a major American giant was brought to its knees by a single stunning decision. The financial fallout for Boeing was swift and brutal. With China freezing deliveries, Boeing's cash flow dried up overnight, sending its stock price plummeting. Already weakened by previous losses and supply chain woes, Boeing now faced a devastating blow. Production of the 737 MAX slowed, leaving hundreds of jets, many painted for Chinese airlines, stranded in storage. Boeing scrambled to find new buyers, often selling at a loss. China accounts for 15% of global aircraft demand, a share no other market could replace. The freeze forced Boeing to abandon growth plans built around China, leaving a gaping hole in its order book. Even if the freeze ended, trust was broken. Chinese airlines would hesitate to order from Boeing again. The crisis wasn't just about lost sales, it threatened Boeing's long-term dominance in aerospace. Airlines plan years ahead, and the uncertainty cast a long shadow. Boeing now faced the prospect of being permanently sidelined in its most important international market. The company's future was suddenly in jeopardy. The world's eyes were on Boeing as it struggled to survive. The crisis quickly rippled beyond Boeing's headquarters, hitting factory floors and small towns. Production cuts led to layoffs for thousands of skilled workers in places like Everett, Washington, jobs that had anchored families for generations. The pain spread to Boeing's vast network of suppliers, many of them small businesses that depended on steady orders. When Boeing cut back, these suppliers faced layoffs and, in some cases, the threat of closure. In Wichita, Kansas, a machine shop owner who'd supplied Boeing for decades was forced to let go half his staff. The freeze turned the American dream into a daily struggle for survival. The impact was deeply personal. Families faced tough choices about mortgages, college, and even putting food on the table. The crisis exposed how a single political decision could devastate communities far from the centers of power. The layoffs and closures were more than statistics. They were stories of real hardship. The Boeing freeze was a stark reminder of how global conflicts can hit home. In an interconnected world, the fallout from a trade dispute can be felt in every corner. The human cost was impossible to ignore. As Boeing faltered, Airbus seized the opportunity. With its Tianjin assembly line, Airbus continued delivering jets to Chinese airlines, quickly ramping up production to meet surging demand. Chinese officials welcomed Airbus, signing major new deals and shifting the balance of power in global aviation. For years, Boeing and Airbus had battled for every order. Now Airbus was running up the score in China. Meanwhile, China's own Comac C-919 jet gained momentum. The government pushed state airlines to buy the C-919, framing it as a patriotic choice. The freeze gave Comac a captive market to refine its jet and build credibility. China was no longer content to be a customer, it aimed to become a global aerospace power. By sidelining Boeing and boosting Airbus and Comac, China was reshaping the industry. The Western duopoly was under threat. The global aviation landscape was changing before our eyes. Boeing's absence opened the door for new champions. The freeze created chaos for Chinese airlines and travelers. Airlines had counted on new Boeing jets to expand routes and replace aging planes. With deliveries halted, expansion plans stalled and new routes were delayed. Passengers faced fewer choices and higher fares as airlines struggled to meet demand. The dream of affordable air travel for China's middle class was put on hold. Airlines kept older, less efficient planes in service, raising costs and increasing delays. Fleet modernization plans were disrupted, slowing progress toward greener, more advanced fleets. The passenger experience suffered, with more crowded flights and less reliability. The freeze also hit global tourism. Fewer Chinese travelers meant lost revenue for destinations worldwide. Hotels, tour operators, and retailers braced for a downturn. The crisis was more than an aviation issue. It threatened global travel and hospitality. The ripple effects were felt far beyond China's borders. The Boeing freeze was a bold move in the ongoing US-China power struggle. By targeting Boeing, China struck at a symbol of American manufacturing and a rare US trade surplus. The message to Washington was clear: target our industries and we'll hit yours. The freeze was economic statecraft, trade as a weapon in a larger geopolitical contest. The tech war was the backdrop, with the US restricting Chinese access to advanced technology. In response, China accelerated efforts to build its own industrial ecosystem, free from US influence. Promoting the C-919 was part of this strategy. The crisis became a catalyst for China's push for self-reliance. Beijing showed it was willing to absorb short-term pain for long-term gain. The grounded jets symbolized a new, more confrontational era in US-China relations. The old rules of global trade were being rewritten. The world watched as two superpowers battled for economic supremacy. The future of global stability was at stake. The Boeing crisis was just one move in a high-stakes chess game. The Boeing crisis forced America to rethink its economic relationship with China. For decades, US companies had chased the Chinese market, believing trade would ensure stability. The freeze shattered that illusion, exposing the risks of dependence on a strategic rival. Boeing scrambled to diversify, seeking new buyers in India, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. But no market could fully replace China's scale. The crisis triggered a shift in US strategy, from efficiency to resilience and security. Policymakers pushed to strengthen domestic supply chains and work with allies to reduce vulnerabilities. The era of unbridled globalization was ending. The focus turned to aligning economic interests with national security. The Boeing freeze became a case study in the dangers of economic dependence. The lines between commerce and conflict were now blurred. The old rules of global trade no longer applied. As of September 2025, the Boeing-China standoff drags on, with no resolution in sight. China hints at possible cooperation, but deep geopolitical tensions remain. Business leaders hope logic will prevail, but the path to renewed trust is steep. Both sides are digging in. Boeing seeks new markets, China builds up Airbus and Comac. The standoff is becoming the new normal. For workers, suppliers, and travelers, the uncertainty is agonizing. Laid-off employees wonder if their jobs will return. Small businesses fight to survive. Chinese travelers face fewer options and higher prices. The longer the conflict lasts, the deeper the scars and the harder it will be to rebuild trust. The world faces a choice: return to cooperation or slide further into conflict. The outcome will shape the future of global trade and travel. Will the skies connect us or divide us? The answer will define the 21st century.